My name is Scarlett. I'm 32. Last Thanksgiving at 6:47 p.m., I stood in my parents' kitchen doorway holding a bowl of mashed potatoes while my father looked me dead in the eyes and said, "Your sister saved this family, and you couldn't even bother to help. You should be ashamed." The potatoes were still steaming. My mother's good china was set for 8 people, and my sister Mia was crying fake tears into her cloth napkin at the head of the table where I used to sit. "Dad, that's not—" "Don't." He held up one hand. His voice dropped to that cold register he used when a conversation was over. Mia showed us the bank statements. 3 years, Scarlett. 3 years she kept us afloat while you were too busy with your career to even call. My brother-in-law Patrick put his arm around Mia's shoulders. He was wearing a navy cashmere sweater I'd never seen before. Probably cost $400. "It's okay, babe," he murmured, loud enough for everyone to hear. "You did what you had to do." I set the potatoes down on the counter. My hands weren't shaking yet, but I could feel the tremor starting in my wrists. "What bank statements?" Mia looked up. Her mascara was perfect, not even smudged. "The ones showing every payment I made, every single month for 3 years. The mortgage, the utilities, the property taxes, $67,000 total, Scarlett, while you sent nothing." The number hit me like cold water. $67,000. I'd sent $72,000. I had the transfers in my Chase account going back 36 months, the first one dated November 2020, the last one 3 weeks ago. Every single one marked for Mom and Dad, mortgage help. My mother stood up from the table. She was holding a wine glass, and her lipstick had left a perfect burgundy crescent on the rim. "Mia sacrificed so much. She even put her business plans on hold to support us. And you couldn't contribute even once?" "I did contribute," I said. My voice sounded strange to my own ears, too quiet, too steady. "I sent $2,000 every month for 3 years. Patrick laughed. Actually laughed. "Scarlett, if you're going to lie, at least make it believable. We've seen your bank account. You barely make enough to cover your own rent." That was when I knew. The specific phrasing, "We've seen your bank account." Not, "We heard you're struggling." Not, "We know money's tight." They'd actively looked. They'd checked. And they'd decided I was lying because they couldn't find the money they'd been stealing. Before I go on, if stories about standing up for yourself mean something to you, please hit like and subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from right now and what time is it there. Let me take you back 3 years and 2 months to October 2020. I was sitting in my apartment in downtown Philadelphia, a 600 square foot studio that cost $1,340 a month, eating Thai takeout straight from the container when my mother called. It was 9:15 p.m. on a Wednesday. I remember because I'd just gotten home from a 14-hour shift during merger audit season, and I was so tired my eyes were burning. "Scarlett, honey." Her voice had that careful brightness that meant something was very wrong. "I need to talk to you about something." I set down my fork. "What happened?" "Your father and we're having some trouble with the mortgage. The pandemic hurt his consulting work, and my hours got cut at the hospital. We're about $11,000 behind." My stomach dropped. My parents had owned that house, a 3-bedroom colonial on Maple Ridge Drive, for 28 years. I grew up in that house, learned to ride a bike in that driveway, built a treehouse in the backyard oak that was still standing. "How much do you need?" I asked. "Oh, sweetheart, I'm not asking you for money. I know you're just getting started in your career. Mia and Patrick said they'd help us out. They're doing so well with Patrick's business, and Mia's been working on some exciting projects. I just wanted you to know what was happening." Something in her tone felt off, but I pushed it aside. "Mom, I can help. I'm a senior forensic accountant at Bennett and Cross. I worked a triple merger audit last quarter. My bonus alone was $15,000. Let me send you something." There was a pause. Then, "That's very sweet, but Mia's already arranged everything. She's going to cover the mortgage and utilities until your father's business picks back up. We don't want to burden you." It's not a burden. I want to help. Scarlett. Her voice firmed. Mia has it handled. Don't worry about it. But I did worry. That night, I lay awake thinking about my parents losing their home, about my mother's careful tone, about the fact that Mia, who'd been starting a brand consulting business for 5 years without a single client I'd ever heard of, suddenly had enough cash to cover a $2,400 monthly mortgage plus utilities. The next morning, I called my father directly. Dad, I want to help with the house. Let me send you $2,000 a month. It's not the full mortgage, but it'll make a dent. Scarlett, your mother told you. Mia's taking care of it. I know. But I'm your daughter too. Let me contribute. He was quiet for a long moment. Then, all right. If you want to help, that's good of you. Thank you. I set up the transfer that day, Chase checking to their joint account, recurring monthly payment, $2,000 on the first of every month. I added a note. For Mom and Dad, mortgage help. I didn't tell Mia. I didn't tell my mother. I figured they'd see it in the account and know I was helping, and for 3 years, I never missed a payment. November 2020, December, January 2021, February, March, through COVID, through my promotion to fraud detection specialist, through my transfer to the Philadelphia office, through every bonus, every tax season, every exhausting 80-hour week during quarterly audits, $2,000 times 36 months, $72,000. And now I was standing in my parents' kitchen being told I'd never helped at all. My father was still talking. Mia showed us the proof, the mortgage company statements with her name on the payments, the utility bills she covered. She even paid the property taxes last year when we got behind. Did you see canceled checks? I asked. My forensic accounting brain was starting to click into gear, running scenarios, looking for the gap. Did you see bank transfers from her account to yours? We saw the statements, my mother said. She'd moved to stand next to my father, a united front. Mia doesn't need to prove anything to you. She's been here, Scarlett, every week for Sunday dinner, helping us with the yard work, driving us to doctor appointments. Where have you been? I'd been working 60-hour weeks to keep those $2,000 payments flowing. I'd been skipping vacations and eating instant ramen and driving a 2009 Honda Civic with 160,000 miles because every spare dollar went to my parents. But I didn't say that. My throat had gone completely dry. Mia stood up from the table. She walked over to me slowly, and I saw it then. The calculation in her eyes. The performance. She reached out and touched my arm, and her voice was soft, wounded. Scarlett, I know we haven't always been close. I know you probably resent that Mom and Dad needed my help instead of yours. But lying about it? That's just cruel. I'm not lying. Then show us the bank statements, Patrick said. He'd stood up too, moving to flank Mia like a bodyguard. Show us the transfers. I should have done it right then. I should have pulled out my phone, opened my Chase app, and showed them 3 years of outgoing transfers, every single one, with their joint account number as the destination. But something stopped me. Maybe it was the way they were all looking at me, my parents, my sister, my brother-in-law, like I was the villain, like I was the liar, like I'd somehow failed a test I didn't even know I was taking. I'll get them, I said quietly. I'll bring the statements. Don't bother, my father said. If you had them, you would have shown us by now. That was when I knew the conversation was over. That was when I realized nothing I said in this moment would matter because they'd already decided the truth. Mia was the hero. I was the disappointment. The story was written. I picked up my coat from the hall closet. The house smelled like turkey and sage and my mother's brown sugar sweet potatoes, all my childhood Thanksgivings compressed into one sensory memory. I'd probably never smell it again. Where are you going? My mother asked. Home. Scarlett, we're about to eat. I'm not hungry. I walked out at 7:03 p.m. My car was parked at the curb behind Patrick's new Audi Q5. Probably a lease, I thought automatically. Probably $650 a month. Where was that money coming from if they were so generous with my parents? I sat in my Honda for a full 5 minutes before I could make my hands work the keys. My face was hot, but my fingers were numb. Classic adrenaline response. I'd learned about it in a continuing education seminar on fraud psychology. When people are confronted with evidence of their own wrongdoing, they don't usually confess. They attack. They flip the script. They make you the criminal. I drove home in silence. No radio, no podcast. Just the sound of my own breathing and the hum of the highway and the questions cycling through my brain like an audit algorithm. Where did my $72,000 go? How did Mia convince my parents she'd paid their mortgage? What kind of statements could she have shown them that didn't include my transfers? And the biggest question, how long had she been planning this? I got to my apartment at 8:47 p.m. I didn't turn on the lights. I sat on my secondhand IKEA couch in the dark and opened my Chase mobile app. The blue screen glowed in the darkness. November 1st, 2020. $2,000 to Andrew and Mary Chen, ex 4892. For mom and dad, mortgage help. December 1st, 2020. $2,000 to Andrew and Mary Chen, ex 4892. For mom and dad, mortgage help. January 1st, 2021. $2,000 to Andrew and Mary Chen, ex 4892. For mom and dad, mortgage help. All the way down to October 1st, 2023. 36 identical transfers, $72,000 total. Then I did what I should have done 3 years ago. I logged into my parents' mortgage account. I was still listed as an authorized user from when they'd added me in college to build my credit. They'd never removed me. Current balance owed $184,600. Original balance in October 2020, $178,800. Amount past due, $5,800. I read it 3 times. The numbers didn't change. My parents owed more on their mortgage now than they had when I started helping. 3 years of my $2,000 monthly payments, $72,000, and their balance had gone up by $5,800. That meant not only had my payments disappeared, but the mortgage itself hadn't been paid in months, maybe a year. I pulled up the payment history. I had to scroll down past dozens of entries marked late fee applied and insufficient payment. The last full mortgage payment had been posted on March 15th, 2023, 8 months ago. Every payment since then had been partial or missing entirely. But there were other transactions, small ones, credits to the account. April 12th, 2023, $400 from Mary Chen, partial PMT. May 3rd, 2023, $600 from Mary Chen, partial PMT. June 8th, 2023, $500 from Mary Chen, partial PMT. My mother had been making small, irregular payments from her own checking account. Desperate payments. The kind you make when you're trying to keep the bank from foreclosing, but you don't have enough to cover the full amount. Which meant she knew they were behind. She knew they were in trouble, but she'd told me, told everyone, that Mia had it handled. I opened a new browser tab and pulled up my father's credit report. I was listed as an authorized contact on his accounts through my work as a forensic accountant, helping them reorganize their finances 5 years ago. Another thing they'd never revoked. The report loaded slowly, line by line, and there it was. Discover card, account ending in 7721. Balance, $42,000. Credit limit, $42,000. Account opened, January 2022. Payment history, current. Someone had opened a maxed-out credit card in my father's name, and according to the detailed transaction report, the card had been used exclusively for Sephora, Nordstrom, Whole Foods, Starbucks, a boutique branding agency called Elevate Consulting Partners, and exactly 17 payments to something called Sister Act Brand Studio, LLC. I didn't need to investigate further. I knew who owned Sister Act Brand Studio, LLC. My sister had mentioned it casually last Christmas. Patrick and I finally launched my brand consulting firm. We're calling it Sister Act. Cute, right? I sat there in the dark with my laptop screen glowing, and I did something I hadn't done since I was 14 years old and my grandmother died. I laughed. Not a happy laugh, the kind of laugh that happens when the bottom drops out of reality and you realize you've been living in someone else's story all along. Mia hadn't saved my parents. She'd robbed them. She'd taken my $72,000 in monthly support, spent it on herself and her fake business, and used my parents' credit to cover the gap. Then she'd convinced them she was the hero, and I was the one standing in the kitchen holding mashed potatoes, being called a liar. I spent the next 2 days compiling documents. It's what I do for a living: build cases, find patterns, follow the money. But this time, it was personal. This time, every transaction I highlighted made my stomach hurt. I pulled all 36 of my Chase transfer confirmations showing $2,000 monthly to account XXXXXX4892. My parents' mortgage account statement showing current balance, past due amount, and payment history. The credit report showing the Discover card opened in my father's name. The Discover card transaction. History showing all the charges to Mia's business and personal expenses. My parents' joint checking account history. Still had access as financial POA from when Dad had surgery in 2019. That last one was the most damning, because I could see the incoming deposits. My $2,000 transferred in on the first of every month like clockwork, and I could see the outgoing transfers, usually within 24 to 48 hours, going to an account ending in 3348. I looked up account 3348 in my records. It was Patrick's personal checking account. The money I sent to help my parents had been immediately transferred to my brother-in-law. For 3 years, $72,000. And then he and Mia had spent it while my parents fell further behind. But I needed more. I needed to understand how Mia had convinced my parents she was the one helping. What kind of statements had she shown them? I called the mortgage company Monday morning at 8:15 a.m., right when they opened. Bay Shore Home Loans, this is Crystal speaking. Hi, Crystal. This is Scarlett Chen. I'm calling about account 489277736 under Andrew and Mary Chen. I'm an authorized user on the account. Sure thing, let me pull that up. What can I help you with today? I need to know about the payment history. Specifically, I need to know if there's any documentation showing who made which payments. Okay, looking at the account, I'm showing that most payments came from the primary account holder, Mary Chen, from a checking account ending in 4892. There are some partial payments from that same account as recent as October, but the account is currently $5,800 past due, and there's a pre-foreclosure notice scheduled to be filed next week. My chest went tight. Next week? Yes, ma'am. The account is 247 days past due. Once it hits 270 days, the lender will initiate foreclosure proceedings. 23 days. My parents had 23 days before they'd lose the house they'd owned for 28 years. Crystal, I'm a forensic accountant. I need to know, has anyone else called about this account recently? Another family member, maybe? There was a pause. I'm not supposed to disclose call history, but let me check the notes. Okay, yes. There are several notes here from someone named Mia Chen Patterson. She called in August asking about the balance and payment options. She said she was the homeowner's daughter and wanted to help set up a payment plan. Did she make any payments? No, ma'am. No payments from her account. The notes say she asked about getting statements mailed to a different address, and we sent duplicates to, let me see, 412 Birchwood Lane, Unit 7. That was Mia and Patrick's address. Thank you, I said quietly. That's very helpful. I hung up and sat at my desk staring at my office wall. I was supposed to be preparing for a client meeting in 20 minutes, a healthcare organization suspected of embezzling by their CFO. It was a $2.3 million case, but all I could think about was my own family, my own sister. She'd requested statements, not to help, to study them, to see what the mortgage company was sending my parents, to craft her own version of reality. My phone buzzed. Text from my mother. Mia mentioned you left upset on Thanksgiving. I know it's hard to accept that you weren't able to help us financially. Maybe we can have lunch this week and talk about it. I stared at that message for a full minute. The casual cruelty of it, the complete rewriting of history. You weren't able to help us financially. I'd helped them more than anyone, and she was comforting me for failing to do the thing I'd already done. I didn't respond. The next 3 weeks were a blur of work and investigation. I showed up to the office at 6:30 a.m. and stayed until 9 p.m. My colleagues thought I was burying myself in the healthcare embezzlement case, but really I was building two cases, one for my client, one for my family. I pulled tax returns through my access as their former financial POA. I found the trail. Mia and Patrick had reported income of $43,000 in 2021, $39,000 in 2022, and $52,000 in 2023. But their lifestyle, the Audi Q5, the boutique clothing, the $3,200 branding website, the weekly dinners at restaurants that ran $200 plus per visit, suggested spending closer to $120,000 annually. The gap was exactly $72,000 over 3 years. My money. Funding their lifestyle while they convinced my parents they were the generous ones. I found more credit lines opened in my parents' names. A $5,000 personal line of credit through a local credit union, maxed out. A Target credit card with a $3,800 balance. 3 buy now pay later accounts through a firm, total balance $2,400. All opened using my parents' information. All with purchases that benefited Mia and Patrick. A MacBook Pro, photography equipment for Sister Act brand studio, a designer handbag. It was identity theft, fraud, elder financial abuse, and my parents had no idea. On December 15th, my mother called me at work. "Scarlett, honey, can you talk?" I put my pen down. "Sure, Mom. What's going on?" I need to ask you something." Her voice wavered. "Your father doesn't know I'm calling, but the mortgage company sent another notice. We're in pre-foreclosure. They're saying we might lose the house." My hand tightened on the phone. "When did you find out?" "Last week. Mia said not to worry, that she's been working on a solution. Something about a crypto investment pool she and Patrick are part of. They're expecting a big payout in January that'll cover everything we owe. But I'm scared, Scarlett. What if it doesn't come through?" A crypto investment pool. Of course. The perfect unprovable promise. "Mom," I said carefully, "have you seen proof of this investment? Account statements? Transaction records?" Mia showed me something on her phone, numbers and charts. I didn't really understand it, but she said it's a sure thing. Patrick's business partner recommended it. Patrick doesn't have a business partner. He does gig work as a marketing consultant. There was a long silence. "Mom, I need to show you something. Can you meet me tomorrow? Just you, not Dad, not Mia." "I don't know if I should." "Mom." I kept my voice gentle but firm. "I've been sending you and Dad $2,000 every month for 3 years. $72,000 total. And none of it went to your mortgage. I need you to see what happened to it." Another silence, then very quietly, "Tomorrow. Lou's Diner. 10 a.m. She hung up. I barely slept that night. I kept rehearsing what I'd say, how I'd show her the evidence without sounding like I was attacking her. But every scenario ended the same way in my head. She wouldn't believe me. She'd choose Mia. She'd call me a liar just like Thanksgiving. But I had to try. The next morning at 9:47 a.m., I walked into Lou's Diner, carrying a leather portfolio folder that contained 47 pages of printed documentation, bank statements, mortgage records, credit reports, transfer confirmations, all organized with color-coded tabs. I spotted my mother in a booth by the window. She looked smaller than I remembered, older. Her hands were wrapped around a coffee mug, and she didn't look up until I slid into the seat across from her. "Hi, Mom." "Hi, sweetheart." She finally met my eyes, and I saw something there I hadn't expected. Fear, not anger, not defensiveness. Fear. "Show me." I opened the portfolio and slid the first document across the table. "This is my Chase account history. 3 years of transfers. $2,000 on the first of every month going to account ending in 4892. Your joint checking account." She pulled the paper closer, squinting at the tiny rows of transactions. Her finger traced down the page. "This is your mortgage statement from the lender," I continued, sliding the next page. "You can see here, the balance went up over 3 years, not down. The last full payment was in March. Everything since then has been partial payments or nothing." Her hand trembled. "But Mia said," "Here's where my money went." I showed her the joint account history with the outgoing transfers highlighted in yellow. "Every deposit I made was transferred to Patrick's personal account within 48 hours, for 3 years. "No." She shook her head. "No, that's not possible. Mia showed us proof. Statements from the mortgage company with her name. She requested duplicate statements mailed to her address. She could have altered them on her computer. Mom, I work in forensic accounting. I investigate fraud for a living. This is fraud." I showed her the credit report next, the Discover card, the personal line of credit, the identity theft. "Mom, Mia opened credit lines in Dad's name without his permission. She used them to fund her fake business and her lifestyle, and she convinced you she was saving you." My mother stared at the credit report for a long time. Her face had gone very pale. "The Discover card. Andrew got a statement for it 2 months ago. We thought it was a mistake. Mia said she'd call the company and sort it out." "She didn't sort it out. She's been using it." "How much do we owe?" Her voice was barely a whisper. "Between the mortgage arrears, the Discover card, the credit union loan, and the other accounts, about $155,000. So." She pressed both hands flat on the table. "Oh God. Mom." I reached across and covered her hand with mine. "I have a plan, but I need you to trust me. And I need you to not tell Mia or Patrick that we talked." She looked up at me with tears in her eyes. "Why didn't you tell me you were helping? Why did you let me think you weren't contributing?" That question hurt more than anything that had happened on Thanksgiving. Because the answer was, "I thought you knew. I thought you'd see the deposits. I thought you'd realize. But I'd been invisible. Again." "I thought it didn't matter who got the credit as long as you were okay," I said. "I was wrong." We talked for another hour. I explained my plan. I would take over their finances completely. Legal power of attorney, direct access to all accounts, control of all incoming and outgoing money. I would stop the pre-foreclosure by making a lump payment to bring the mortgage current. I would negotiate payment plans for the fraudulent credit lines, and I would cut off Mia and Patrick's access to everything. "Your father will be furious," my mother said. "Dad needs to know the truth. He won't believe it. She's always been his favorite, since she was little. Then we'll show him the same documents I showed you. Evidence doesn't care about favorites." My mother's hands had stopped shaking. She finished her coffee and looked at me with something I hadn't seen in her face in years. Respect. "Okay," she said. "We'll tell him tonight." That evening at 6:30 p.m., I sat at my parents' dining room table, the same table where I'd been called a liar 3 weeks ago, and watched my father's face change as I walked him through the evidence. He didn't interrupt. He didn't argue. He just sat there, turning pages, his jaw getting tighter with each document. When I finished, he was quiet for a long time. Then, how could I have been so stupid? You weren't stupid, I said. You were lied to by someone you trusted. That's different. I called you selfish. His voice cracked. I said you should be ashamed. Dad, no. He looked at me finally, and his eyes were red. I owe you an apology. A real one. Not just for Thanksgiving. For everything. For believing I knew which daughter to trust. We spent the next hour going over logistics. I had the power of attorney documents already prepared. I'd drafted them the night before with a notary standing by. My father signed them without reading the fine print. My mother signed too. As of 7:42 p.m. on December 16th, 2023, I had complete legal control over my parents' finances. The first thing I did was change all the passwords on their bank accounts. The second thing I did was call the mortgage company and make a $5,800 payment from my own account to bring them current and stop the foreclosure. The third thing I did was remove Mia and Patrick as authorized users on every account. What do we tell them? My mother asked. Nothing, I said. We wait for Thanksgiving. We let them think they're still winning. My father looked at me with something like awe. You're setting a trap. I'm setting the table, I corrected. They'll trap themselves. The next 11 months were the longest of my life. I paid my parents' mortgage every month. The full $2,400 now, plus extra toward the principal. I negotiated settlements on the fraudulent credit lines, getting most of them reduced or dismissed as identity theft. I rebuilt my parents' credit score from 580 to 697. And I saved every piece of evidence, every statement, every transfer confirmation, every credit report update. Mia called my parents twice a week. She'd visit on Sundays for dinner, bringing Patrick and their fake smiles. She'd ask how they were doing financially, and my mother would say, "Oh, we're managing. That crypto investment you mentioned, is it still coming through?" And Mia would make excuses. Soon. Probably January. Definitely by March. The market's been volatile. My father would nod and not mention that his credit card statements showed Mia's business was still making charges. He didn't mention that I was paying his mortgage. He played the part of the grateful father, and Mia never suspected a thing. In October, my mother asked Mia if she'd like to host Thanksgiving this year. Your house is bigger now, after all. Mia got flustered. Actually, we're having some renovations done. Why don't we just do it at your place again? Of course, she needed the familiar territory, the place where she'd won last year. 3 weeks before Thanksgiving, I prepared my presentation. Not a speech, not a confrontation, just a simple slideshow with 32 pages of documentation. Bank statements with my transfers highlighted, mortgage payment history, credit reports, transfer records showing the money going to Patrick's account, screenshots of Mia's Instagram showing expensive dinners and shopping trips during the month she claimed to be sacrificing for our parents. And one final document, a signed affidavit from Bayshore Home Loans confirming that Mia Chen Patterson had never made a single payment on account 4892-7736. I practiced in front of my bathroom mirror. Not what I'd say, just how I'd stand, how I'd keep my face neutral, how I'd resist the urge to yell or cry or defend myself. Because this wasn't about me being right. This was about the truth being undeniable. Thanksgiving Day, 2024. I arrived at my parents' house at 4:30 p.m. with my laptop in a messenger bag and a bottle of expensive wine I didn't plan to drink. Mia and Patrick were already there, of course. She'd brought her famous pecan pie and was arranging it on the counter like she was staging a photo shoot. Patrick was opening wine in the living room, telling my father some story about a potential six-figure contract. My mother caught my eye from the kitchen. She looked nervous. I gave her a small nod. We all gathered at the table at 6:15 p.m. My father said grace, something he only did on major holidays, and we started passing dishes. turkey, stuffing. Those same mashed potatoes from last year. The conversation was light, safe. Patrick talked about a marketing seminar he'd attended. Mia mentioned she was thinking of expanding Sister Act to include podcast consulting. My mother asked me about work, and I said it was busy but good. Normal. Perfect. Exactly like a family that hadn't been bleeding money and trust for 3 years. At 6:47 p.m., I checked my watch. My father stood up. He was holding his wine glass and his hand was perfectly steady. "I want to make a toast," he said. Everyone quieted. Mia smiled, probably expecting praise. "This year has been hard," my father continued. "We almost lost everything, but we didn't, and that is thanks to one person." He paused. "Scarlett." The smile dropped off Mia's face. "Wait, what?" Patrick set down his fork. "Scarlett has been paying our mortgage for 3 years," my father said. His voice was calm, matter of fact. "She sent us $2,000 every month for 36 months. $72,000 total. She stopped our house from being foreclosed. She rebuilt our credit after someone opened fraudulent accounts in my name. She's the reason we're still afloat." Mia's face had gone white. "Dad, that's not—" "She's also the reason we know what you and Patrick did with that money." I pulled out my laptop and opened it on the table. The screen glowed in the candlelight. I didn't say anything. I just turned it toward Mia and clicked to the first slide. "These are Scarlett's bank records," my father said. "Chase account transfers. Every month. Proof." Mia leaned forward, her eyes scanning the screen. I watched her face change as she realized what she was looking at. The exact dollar amounts, the exact dates, the account numbers. "These are false," she said immediately. "She could have faked those." I clicked to the next slide, the mortgage company statement showing the balance history. "The mortgage company confirms they only received payments from your mother's personal account," my father continued. "Partial payments, never from you." "That's because I was paying in cash," Mia said. She was improvising now, and her voice had gone sharp. "I gave money directly to Mom." My mother shook her head slowly. "No, honey, you didn't." I clicked to the next slide. The joint checking account history showing my deposits and the immediate transfers to Patrick's account. "This shows where Scarlett's money actually went," I said quietly. It was the first time I'd spoken since my father started. Every deposit was transferred to Patrick's personal account within 48 hours. And Patrick had pushed his chair back from the table. "That's a lie. I never—" "Here's your account number." I pointed to the screen. "Account ending in 3348. Your personal Wells Fargo checking account opened in March 2020. "How did you get my account information?" His voice was rising. "That's illegal." "It's all on the joint account records," I said. "Public record for authorized users, which I am, and you provided it yourself when you requested access to my parents' account 4 years ago." I clicked to the next slide. The Discover card opened in my father's name. This credit card was opened in January 2022, using my father's information without his consent. The charges include $11,400 to Sister Act Brand Studio, your business, Mia, $8,200 to Elevate Consulting Partners, your website designer, and $4,800 in cash advances. Mia stood up abruptly. "This is insane. You're making me look like some kind of criminal." "I'm not making you look like anything," I said. My voice was still calm, neutral. "I'm showing what happened. These are bank statements, credit reports, mortgage payment history, not opinions, facts." My father pulled out a printed document from his pocket. "This is an affidavit from Bay Shore Home Loans. It confirms that Mia Chen Patterson made 0 payments on our mortgage account during the time period in question." He slid it across the table to Mia. She didn't pick it up. "You told us you were saving us," my mother said. Her voice was thick with tears. "You sat at this table last year and cried and said you were the only one helping. And we believed you." I was helping, Mia's voice cracked. I drove you to appointments. I came to Sunday dinner every week. I was here, physically here, while Scarlett was off living her perfect little life in the city. Paying our mortgage, my father interrupted, while you spent her money on your fake business. It's not fake. Mia slammed her hand on the table. I have clients. I have projects. Name one, I said quietly. Silence. Name one client who paid you, I continued. One contract, one invoice, one piece of work you actually completed and got paid for. Mia's mouth opened, closed, opened again. Nothing came out. Patrick grabbed her arm. We don't have to sit here and be interrogated. Come on, babe. Let's go. You opened credit cards in my name, my father said. His voice had gone cold. You committed identity theft. That's a felony, Patrick. You can't prove I did that. Mia had access to your information. Maybe she... He stopped, realized what he'd just said. Mia stared at him. You're blaming me? I didn't. I just meant, you told me it was fine. Her voice climbed higher. You said using Dad's credit was just temporary until our business took off. You said everyone does it. The room went completely silent. I sat back in my chair and watched them unravel. I didn't have to say another word. The evidence was there. The truth was there. And they were destroying themselves trying to escape it. Get out, my father said finally. Both of you, get out of my house. Dad. Mia's voice broke. Please, I can explain. Explain that you stole $72,000 from your sister while she was trying to help us? Explain that you opened credit cards in my name and ran up $42,000 in debt? Explain that you lied to our faces for 3 years while we almost lost our home? He stood up. Get out. Patrick was already moving toward the door, grabbing his coat. But Mia just stood there, tears streaming down her face, staring at me. You planned this, she whispered. You waited all year just to humiliate me. No, I said. I waited all year to protect our parents. There's a difference. She grabbed her purse and ran for the door. Patrick followed without looking back. We heard Patrick's Audi start up and peel away from the curb at 7:18 p.m. My father sat down slowly. His hands were shaking. She's my daughter. How could she? Because she thought she could, I said. And she would have kept going if you hadn't stopped her. My mother was crying quietly into her napkin. I'm sorry, Scarlett. I'm so sorry we didn't believe you. You believe me now, I said. That's enough. We didn't finish Thanksgiving dinner. The turkey went cold on the table. But we sat there for another hour, just talking. Quiet, honest. My father apologized 14 more times. I told him to stop after the 12th. In the weeks that followed, things moved quickly. My parents filed a police report for identity theft. The credit card companies flagged the fraudulent accounts. Mia and Patrick's bank accounts were frozen pending investigation. I didn't press charges. I didn't need to. The evidence was in the system now. They'd have to deal with the banks, the credit agencies, the legal mess they'd created. My parents' house was safe. Their credit was recovering. And I kept paying their mortgage every month, just like I always had. Mia tried to call me twice in January. I didn't answer. She sent a long email in February explaining how she'd made mistakes, but I didn't understand the pressure she was under. I deleted it without reading past the third paragraph. Some people asked me if I felt guilty, if I wished I'd handled it differently, given her another chance. I don't. Because silence isn't peace. Silence is the price you pay for someone else's comfort. And I'd already paid $72,000. 6 months later, I was sitting in my parents' backyard on a Saturday morning in May, drinking coffee on their deck. The same deck where I used to do homework in high school, where I learned to parallel park in the driveway below, where I'd built that treehouse that was still standing in the oak. My father came out carrying his own coffee. He sat down next to me without saying anything at first. Thank you, he said finally. You don't have to keep thanking me, Dad. I do, though. He looked at me. Not just for the money, for not giving up on us even when we didn't deserve it. I sipped my coffee. It was still too hot, but I needed something to do with my hands. Your mother and I are setting up a college fund, he continued, for your future kids, if you have them, or for whatever you need it for. We can't pay you back the full $72,000, but we can start. You don't have to. We want to. I nodded. Didn't trust my voice to stay steady if I tried to speak. We sat there in the morning sun, watching a robin build a nest in the lower branches of the oak tree. My father's house wasn't perfect. My family wasn't perfect. But we were honest now. And that was enough. If you're watching this, I want you to ask yourself something. Are you being quiet because it keeps the peace? Or because someone trained you to stay small? Both feel like sacrifice. But only one is your choice. If you've ever paid a price for someone else's comfort, type, "I paid the price," in the comments. If you've set a boundary and stuck to it, even when people called you selfish, type, "I held the line." Both are brave. Both are valid. Both mean you chose yourself when it mattered. If this story meant something to you, check the description for more stories just like this one. Thank you for being here. And happy Thanksgiving. May your tables be honest.